You've all heard of it, and likely played it as well. Subway Surfers is a viral phenomenon, and with its more than 3 billion downloads, it was the most downloaded game of the past decade. Somehow, a small Danish indie studio managed to create a game that would be installed in smartphones across all the inhabited continents of the world. But how did we get to this point? Where did it all begin?
I'm Mathias Gredal Nørvig. I'm the CEO of SYBO. SYBO came about when Sylvester and Bodhi, the Sai and Bo of SYBO, met each other at the animation school in Viborg, where they teamed up and made the graduation movie together about a young rascal that runs from a guard when he's caught painting street art. Basically, they left the animation school with the intention of becoming animators. The smartphone came out, they knew that this was the platform. This is where they could make amazing experiences in the palm of people's hands. They tried out different games, Cosmic Cab, Spray Can King, and Graffiti Wars, and some other very interesting game types that were on the App Store in the early years. When Temple Run came out in 2011, they saw that this genre of runners was something that really appealed to their aspirations within the gaming space. So they made Subway Surfers, the first prototypes in January of 2012, brought Kilu on as co-developers and publishers, and the game came out 25th of May 2012.
Hi, my name is Rasmus, and I work at SYBO as an art director. We went to school together with the founders, and a lot of us were taking the same animation education in Jutland. Everybody was into either playing basketball or doing graffiti or doing art. Every time people had a few drinks, they would be drawing on everything, so we were a bit of vandals, I guess.
My name is Jonas Georgakakis, and on paper I'm an art director at SYBO Games, but in reality I'm more like the old guy who's been here forever, who knows a lot about the IP. So I've been working for SYBO for more than 10 years now, before Subway Surfers actually. I joined back when there was only 4 of us here, I think. Back then I was just an artist, I just did the 3D art. When I joined, the dream was actually to make a point-and-click pirate adventure game, which is very far from what SYBO does today.
My name is Jesper, and I'm an art director at SYBO. I joined SYBO around 9 years ago. I think the first part of SYBO was a little bit undocumented. We were 10 people, I think, when I joined. So it was just, hey, come hang out, and oh, by the way, here's a job as well. The vibe was very, very loose, I would say. It was just a bunch of bros doing bro stuff. I mean, back then, I remember one time when it was a super hot summer and we had to close the doors on the windows. We couldn't have them open, it was too hot. We just ended up working in our underwear. Normal conversations about, hey, excuse me, do you mind, I need that PNG file in our underwear. That's just how it is.
Early SYBO was very informal, almost like a family of friends. The early team members really loved each other and loved that the founders gave them an opportunity to work on games and to do what they were dreaming of creatively. A lot of very innovative, very creative ideas came from that vibe.
We were hiring pretty heavily back then, and the company was growing a lot. It was interesting times, high energy, a lot of young people. Having a lot of fun.
I had my own little freelance thing going on, and I just had to join for 2 weeks to do some t-shirts. It went from t-shirts to, hey, can you do a little bit UI? Sure. Hey, can you do some character design? Sure. Hey, we're doing this other game, can you do that as well? And now it's 9 years later, and it just evolved into this huge thing all of a sudden. I always wanted to be the kind of guy who was involved with making something that became an evergreen, like Super Mario or something. You know how you go your whole life wanting something, and when it's actually there, you don't realize it. But all of a sudden, it just clicked for me. I think a Monday morning at a studio update or something, and it's just, whoa, okay, something that I always wanted in my life, or realizing that I was part of that all of a sudden.
Originally, Subway Surfers was meant as like a love letter to 80s, 90s hip-hop. So we made like a New York update, and people were like, whoa, what city are you gonna go to next? People started writing us fan mail requesting that we visit their towns, and got really excited about things I thought was little details. So I think that's the moment where I realized it's more than just a game, it's actually an emotional, attachment people have to our little project.
I knew Bodhi from childhood, and I knew that he was doing this crazy game adventure. Basically, I started as a consultant for SYBO. After a year of that, they asked me to join full-time. I became the managing director, and then after a couple of years of that, in 2017, I became the CEO. When I announced to my colleagues at the investment bank that I was going to the gaming scene, they thought this is silly. But I really felt the urge, and I felt the connection with the founders. I knew that they had a lot of ambitions, I knew they had a lot of drive, and I felt that ignite the spark in me.
I always tell people, like, when they hear I've worked at SYBO Games for over 10 years, they go, wow, you've been 10 years at the same company. And while that's technically true, it's actually not, because SYBO has gone through changes along the way. You know, it's kind of a privilege to see a company grow from 4 people to 120 or whatever we are now. So I feel like I've worked at 4 different game companies over the years. They were just all called SYBO Games, if that makes sense.
I remember one time where all of a sudden this colleague, and I won't mention his name, but he accidentally deleted the whole company. Did you just delete everything, like the whole company? Like, sorry, and then we had to figure out how we got all that back. But that's it, you know, you go from being a super indie company to actually having to have some sort of structure. Even though that it's more structured for the better, now it still has an indie feel. Whoever has a good idea, whoever is willing to work hard, and whoever is good at what they do, they'll get to do fun stuff.
We brought on more internationals, we brought in more experience from the outside. And I think all of those things sort of binding together means that we are in a really good place today. But we wouldn't be here if it weren't for the old timers, if it weren't for the first team, the joints, the creativity, the weird drawings, the whole thing that came together perfectly in the early years of SYBO.
I think when you make a game or any piece of media like a movie or stuff like that, the second you release it, the second you give it to people, it stops being yours 100%. Now you own it with the fans. I think some people struggle with understanding this, but I think it's something you really have to lean into.
I think the challenges of any growth adventure is that growth means change. And with change comes both change in responsibility, sometimes also change in people, and the change in culture that is needed to follow the growth of the company has been sort of the things that we have worked on.
Currently, we're working on how do we envision SYBO in the next 10 years? How can we take something that came from 5 people in a basement to 100 people and millions of downloads? What's the next step from that? Yeah, it's a bit frightening, but also super exciting to do. Yeah. I wish I could tell you more, but I can't.
We have a game right now, and we have a short animated show on YouTube. But we want to go further than that. We basically want to make sure that whichever way you want to enjoy Subway Surfers, there's going to be some way of doing that for you. And there's definitely more stuff coming, I promise.
When I look at the company's trajectory and when I look at the growth of the company, I'm feeling a really strong sense of pride. I know what we've gone through to get here. I know the things we've had to deal with. And I know how the industry has evolved over time. The fact that the game came out and just became the most viral game ever. And the fact that we've then been able to keep it that way since is close to insane.